I married my late wife's best friend for health insurance, and now I'm falling in love with her. We got married in a courthouse with no rings, no kiss, no celebration. Just signatures on paper so Cass could use my military health insurance for injuries her ex gave her. My wife Sarah died 4 years ago during childbirth with our second son. I came home from deployment to 2 babies and a folded flag. Couldn't function, couldn't breathe. Cass was Sarah's best friend. She showed up with casseroles and offered to help with the boys. She was 20, escaping an abusive ex who'd left her drowning in his debts and medical bills from the beatings. "Let me help," she said. Sarah would want someone here. She moved into the guest room, helped with night feedings, never asked for anything except a safe place to sleep. Then the seizures started. Tremors, bruising that wouldn't heal, neurological damage from years of being thrown into walls. "I need surgery," she told me one night, crying. $60,000. I'll never afford it. Marry me. What? For insurance. Military covers spouses. We'll divorce when you're healed and finished with nursing school. We signed a prenup. Separate bedrooms. No intimacy. Pure convenience. She needed health care. I needed help with my boys. Neither of us wanted complications. 3 years later, I'm watching her read to my sons and forgetting how to breathe for different reasons. She's kept Sarah's memory alive, shows the boys pictures, tells them stories, keeps fresh flowers by Sarah's photo. When my 4-year-old accidentally called her Mommy, she gently corrected him. "Mommy's the angel watching over us. I'm just Cass who loves you." She works nights at a bakery, comes home smelling like vanilla and exhaustion, still makes breakfast before collapsing, never complains, never asks for more than our agreement. But lately, everything's changing. Her hugs last longer. She fell asleep in my bed after a hard night with the boys, and I stood there like an idiot wanting to curl around her. Not for sex, just to hold her. Last week, she kissed me. I'd brought her yellow roses after she'd worked 3 doubles. She lit up, hugged me tight, then pressed her lips to mine. Quick, soft, then danced away to make dinner like nothing happened. I found her looking at apartments yesterday. "Just browsing," she said, closing her laptop. But her face, God, her face looked like mine did when I was packing Sarah's things. "Your nursing program starts soon," I said. "Yeah, time to stop being a burden." "You're not," we agreed. "Temporary." My brother called last night. "When are you telling Cass you love her?" "I don't." She calls our sister crying because she loves you, but thinks you're still mourning Sarah. 2 years. She's loved me for 2 years while I've been terrified of dishonoring Sarah's memory. But Sarah sent her to us. Sarah would want this. Tonight, I'm asking Cass on a real date, telling her I love how she hums while cooking, love how she makes my boys laugh, love how she honors my late wife while building something beautiful with us. I'm terrified she'll say our agreement was just business, that she's counting days until freedom. But that kiss, the way she looks at me when she thinks I'm not watching. Maybe, "Daddy?" My 6-year-old is standing in my doorway. "Can Cass be our real mommy now?" "We'll see, buddy. Mommy Sarah visited my dream. She said Cass is her present to us." Kids say things, but my spine just went cold. "When did you dream this?" "Lots of times. Mommy Sarah says Cass is sick inside where doctors can't see. She needs us to love her before the angels take her too." "What?" She said Cass doesn't know yet. I run to Cass's room. She's collapsed on the floor, convulsing, blood from her nose. "Call 911!" I scream to my son. She's unconscious, cold, barely breathing. The paramedics arrive, load her up. I'm holding her hand, begging her to stay. "Sir, is she on any medications?" "For her neurological damage, yes." "Has she had any recent scans?" "Not for a year. Insurance requires—" I stop. "What's wrong with her?" "These symptoms. We need to run tests immediately." At the hospital, they rush her away. I'm in the waiting room when the doctor appears. "Mr. Peterson, your wife has a brain tumor. Advanced, inoperable position. That's impossible. She was fine this morning. These can be dormant for years, then suddenly accelerate. The trauma from her abuse could have masked symptoms. How long have you noticed changes in her behavior?" "Changes. The longer hugs, the kiss, looking at apartments." "Doc, how long does she have?" He doesn't answer directly. "We need to run more tests." My phone buzzes. A text from Cass's number, but she's unconscious. "I scheduled this message months ago. If you're reading this," I collapsed. "I've known about the tumor for 6 months. Sarah would want me to love you both until the end. Don't let me die without hearing you say it back." The ambulance hits a bump, and Cass's hand goes limp in mine. The paramedic leans over her, fingers on her wrist, eyes on the monitor mounted above her head. Numbers flash red, and he grabs his radio. "Her blood pressure is dropping fast," he says into the receiver. "We need neurology standing by." I stare at my phone, still showing that text message. 6 months she knew. 6 months of making breakfast and reading bedtime stories and kissing me in the kitchen while death grew inside her skull. The paramedic wraps a blood pressure cuff around her arm and pumps it tight. He's young, maybe 25, and his hands shake slightly as he adjusts the IV line. I want to ask if she's going to die right here in this ambulance, but my throat won't work. The siren screams above us, and through the back windows, I see traffic pulling aside. Cass's face is gray against the white pillow. Blood has dried under her nose in a dark line. I wipe it away with my thumb, and her skin feels like ice. The paramedic tells me to keep talking to her, that hearing is the last sense to go. I don't know what to say, so I tell her about the yellow roses, about how her smile made me forget to breathe, about how I'm sorry I was too scared to say it sooner. The ambulance lurches to a stop, and the back doors fly open. Bright lights flood in, and hands reach for the stretcher. I try to hold on to Cass, but someone pulls me back. They rush her through automatic doors into a blast of cold air and antiseptic smell. A nurse in blue scrubs blocks my path, clipboard in hand, asking questions rapid fire. What medications is she taking? Does she have any allergies? When did the seizure start? I answer what I can, but my mind is blank on half of it. I don't know what pharmacy she uses. I don't know her blood type. I don't know if she's allergic to penicillin or what her mother died from, or if she's had surgery besides the neurological repair 3 years ago. We've lived together for 3 years, and I don't know these basic things about her. The guilt hits me so hard I have to grab the wall. The nurse keeps writing, keeps asking, and I keep failing. Through the double doors, I can see people surrounding Cass's bed, moving fast, connecting wires and tubes. Someone cuts her shirt off. Another person shines a light in her eyes. I tell the nurse about the head trauma from her ex, about the seizures she used to have, about the surgery we got married for. She nods and writes faster. Does she have a living will? I don't know. Does she have a healthcare proxy? I don't know. The nurse looks at me with something like pity and tells me to wait in the family area. Someone will update me soon. I sink into a plastic chair that's bolted to the floor. The waiting room is empty except for an old man sleeping in the corner. The TV on the wall plays the news with no sound. I pull out my phone and read that text message again. I've known about the tumor for 6 months. My hands start shaking so bad I almost drop the phone. She knew, and she kept working at the bakery and helping with homework and putting flowers by Sarah's photo. She knew, and she still kissed me in the kitchen. My brother walks in 45 minutes later, still in his work clothes, tie loosened. He spots me immediately and crosses the room in long strides. I called him from the ambulance, barely able to form words. He sits down next to me without saying anything stupid about how it'll be fine or how I should stay positive. He just sits there, solid and present, the way he's always been. He pulls out his phone and calls our sister. The boys are asleep, he tells her, but this is bad, and we need you there when they wake up. He listens for a minute, then says, no, don't tell them anything yet. Just say, Dad had to go to the hospital with Cass, and he'll call in the morning. He ends the call and puts his phone away. We sit in silence while the clock on the wall ticks past midnight, past 1, past 2. Other people come and go, called back through those double doors to see their loved ones. Nobody calls my name. At 3 hours exactly, a man in surgical scrubs pushes through the doors. He looks around the waiting room, and his eyes land on me. Are you Cass Peterson's husband? He asks. I stand up so fast the chair scrapes loud against the floor. He introduces himself as Dr. Hudson and asks me to follow him. We walk down a hallway to a small room with a desk and 2 chairs. He closes the door carefully, the kind of careful that tells me everything before he even opens his mouth. He gestures to a chair, but I can't sit down. He sits instead, pulls up something on a computer screen and starts talking about CT scans and mass locations. The tumor is in her temporal lobe, he says, roughly 4 centimeters. It's a glioblastoma, grade 4, the most aggressive type. It's been growing slowly for probably 2 years before accelerating in the last few months. The location makes it inoperable without causing severe brain damage to language and memory centers. Even with aggressive treatment, we're looking at months, not years. I finally sit down because my legs stop working. Months. He keeps talking about treatment options and clinical trials, but all I hear is months. How? I ask him. How has she been functioning normally with something that size in her brain? He leans back in his chair and explains that the human brain is remarkably adaptable. Some people compensate incredibly well until sudden decompensation occurs. He mentions that her previous head trauma from abuse might have masked early symptoms. Headaches, memory issues, mood changes could all have seemed like expected consequences rather than new problems. She probably attributed everything to her old injuries and never thought to get new scans. I tell him about the scheduled text message, about how she said she's known for 6 months. He nods slowly and says, patients sometimes sense something is wrong before diagnosis. They avoid seeking help out of fear or denial, hoping if they ignore it, the problem will go away. He looks at me with genuine sympathy and says, I can see her once she's moved to ICU, probably another hour. She's stable for now. he adds, and they've given her medication to prevent more seizures. I walk out into the hallway, and the fluorescent lights hurt my eyes. I pull out my phone and call my sister. She answers on the first ring, voice thick with sleep. The boys are fine, she tells me, still asleep. How bad is it? I tell her the truth because I physically cannot lie right now. Brain tumor, inoperable, months to live. She starts crying on the other end of the line. I'll keep the boys as long as you need, she says through tears. They don't need to see you falling apart like this. She's right, but it still feels like failure. I end the call and slide down the wall until I'm sitting on the floor. My brother finds me there 5 minutes later. He slides down next to me, shoulder pressed against mine. I finally break down completely, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and animal. I tell him I never said it back. She's been loving me for 2 years while I was too scared to admit I loved her too. Now it's too late. Now she's dying, and I wasted all that time being afraid. He lets me cry for a while before speaking. Cass is still alive right now, he says quietly. You need to tell her everything the moment she wakes up. She deserves to hear it, even if the ending is terrible. His words cut through my panic enough that I can breathe again. He's right. She's still alive, still here. I still have time to tell her. I push myself up off the floor and wipe my face with my sleeve. My brother stands too and puts a hand on my shoulder. The waiting room clock shows almost 4 in the morning. Somewhere in this hospital, Cass is being moved to ICU. Somewhere in this building, she's still breathing. I focus on that single fact and let it anchor me. She's still breathing. I can still tell her. That has to be enough to keep me standing for whatever comes next. Finally, a nurse with kind eyes appears in the doorway and calls my name. I follow her through double doors marked ICU, past other rooms with beeping machines and sleeping patients. She stops at room 7 and gestures inside. Cass is there in the bed, so small under white sheets. Tubes run everywhere. An IV in her arm, a breathing tube down her throat, monitors beeping steady rhythms. Her face looks peaceful but wrong, like she's somewhere far away. I pull the chair close and take her hand. It's warmer now than it was in the ambulance. That has to mean something good. The nurse leaves us alone, and I just sit there for a minute, looking at her. Then I start talking because I can't not talk anymore. I tell her about 8 months ago when our younger son had a nightmare about monsters. She came into his room at 2 in the morning and sang to him, some old song I didn't recognize. Her voice was soft and a little off-key. The kitchen light made her hair glow. She had flour in it from baking bread earlier. I stood in the doorway watching her rock him back to sleep. That's when I knew I was falling for her. I describe how her laugh fills up our whole house, how she makes terrible jokes that the boys think are hilarious, how she's given them the kind of childhood Sarah would have wanted, the kind with pancakes on Saturday mornings, and someone who shows up to every school event, someone who knows their favorite colors and reads the same bedtime story 5 nights in a row without complaining. I tell her she's been a better mother to my boys than I had any right to hope for. Then I confess the hard part. I've been hiding behind Sarah's memory like a coward, using grief as an excuse to not feel anything new. The truth is, I was just scared of losing someone again, scared of dishonoring what Sarah and I had. But my son was right. Sarah sent Cass to us. Loving Cass doesn't make Sarah matter less. It honors everything Sarah was by letting love keep growing in our family. I squeeze her hand and tell her I love her. I should have said it months ago, years ago. I wasted so much time being afraid. Around midnight, according to the wall clock, her fingers move in mine. Just a small twitch, but I feel it. Her eyes move under her eyelids. Then they open, unfocused and confused. She looks around the room like she doesn't know where she is. Her hand goes to the breathing tube and she starts pulling at it. I jump up and hit the call button. A nurse rushes in and checks the monitors. She adjusts something on the IV and tells Cass to stay calm. They're going to remove the tube, but she needs to hold still. It takes 2 nurses to keep Cass's hands away, while a doctor I haven't seen before carefully removes the breathing tube. Cass coughs and gags. The sound is awful. They give her ice chips and tell her not to try talking yet. But once the nurses step back, she looks right at me with tears running down her face. Her voice comes out rough and broken. She says she's sorry. Sorry for lying. Sorry for keeping secrets. Sorry for everything. I lean close and tell her to stop. She has nothing to be sorry for. I'm the one who should apologize. I wasted 2 years we could have spent being honest with each other. 2 years where I could have told her I loved her every single day. She tries to shake her head, but winces. The movement hurts. She whispers that she found out about the tumor 6 months ago. A routine scan for her old neurological damage showed it. The doctor said it was too big and in the wrong spot to operate. He said maybe a year if she was lucky. She made the choice not to tell me because she didn't want me to watch another woman die. Didn't want to be a burden. She wanted the boys to remember her as someone who loved them and made them laugh, not someone they had to watch suffer and fade away. I tell her that choice wasn't hers to make alone. We're married. That means we face terrible things together. She laughs, but it sounds wet and painful. She reminds me we're only married on paper for insurance. A business arrangement. Nothing more. I say that's about to change if she'll let it. Her eyes get wide. I ask her to marry me for real this time. With rings we pick out together. With a kiss that means everything. With a celebration where everyone knows we chose each other. She starts crying harder and laughing at the same time. She says yes through the tears. The ICU nurse at the monitoring station pretends to be focused on her computer, but I see her wiping her eyes. Morning comes with harsh fluorescent lights and the sound of carts rolling past. Dr. Hudson appears in the doorway, still holding Cass's hand. He reviews her chart and checks the monitors. He asks how she's feeling, and she says tired but okay. He nods and asks if we want to discuss treatment options. Cass squeezes my hand hard. She says she wants to hear everything, even if it's bad. She's done hiding from reality. Dr. Hudson pulls up a chair and explains that the standard treatment for this type of brain tumor is radiation, combined with chemotherapy. It might give her 6 to 12 months of decent quality of life. The tumor will keep growing but slower. There's also an experimental immunotherapy trial happening at this hospital. It's shown good results in some patients. But it's tough. Lots of side effects. No guarantee it will work. Some people in the trial have lived years longer than expected. Others didn't respond at all. Cass's fingers tighten around mine, and she looks directly at Dr. Hudson. She asks what happens if she does nothing at all. He sets down her chart and explains that without treatment, she probably has 2 to 3 months before the tumor causes serious problems. Her speech would go first, then movement on her left side, then seizures that get worse until her brain can't control basic functions anymore. Cass nods slowly, like she expected this answer. She turns to me and asks what I think she should do. I tell her I'll support whatever choice she makes, but I'm not ready to give up on her yet. I squeeze her hand and say the boys aren't ready either. She closes her eyes for a long moment, and I watch her chest rise and fall with careful breaths. When she opens her eyes again, there's something different in them, something determined. She tells Dr. Hudson she wants to try the experimental treatment. She says she wants to fight for more time with me and the boys even if it's really hard. Dr. Hudson actually smiles and says that's exactly what he was hoping to hear. He explains that he'll have Dr. Alexandria Brooks from oncology come talk to us about enrolling in the clinical trial and what we should expect. He checks a few more things on her monitors and says Brooks should be available later this evening. After he leaves, Cass starts crying again, but this time it's different. She says she's scared of the treatment failing and putting everyone through watching her suffer for nothing. I move closer and tell her that trying is better than giving up, that the boys need to see her fighting because that's what brave people do. She laughs through the tears and says she doesn't feel very brave right now. I kiss her forehead and tell her bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about being terrified and doing the hard thing anyway. My phone buzzes around 2 in the afternoon. It's my sister saying the boys have been asking for Cass constantly and getting more upset by the hour. She asks if it would be okay to bring them to the hospital. I check with the ICU nurse who says family visits are usually restricted, but given the circumstances, they can make an exception for a brief visit. I text my sister back and tell her to bring them. I meet them in the family waiting area about 30 minutes later. My older son runs to me and wraps his arms around my waist. My younger son is holding my sister's hand, and his eyes are red from crying. I kneel down so I'm at their level and try to figure out how to explain this in words a 6-year-old and 4-year-old can understand. I tell them that Cass is very sick, and the doctors are working hard to help her get better. My older son pulls back and looks at me with those serious eyes that make him seem much older than 6. He asks if Cass is going to die like Mommy Sarah did. The question hits me hard, but I force myself to be honest with him. I say, we don't know yet, but we're going to try very hard to help her get better. I tell him the doctors have special medicine that might work. He processes this information silently while my younger son starts crying harder. My older son asks if he can see Cass, and I tell him yes. I check with the nurses again, and they agree to let both boys visit for just a few minutes. I warn them before we go in that there are a lot of machines and tubes that might look scary, but they're all helping Cass. We walk into the ICU room and both boys stop in the doorway. My younger son grabs my leg and won't let go. The monitors are beeping steadily, and Cass has an IV in each arm, plus oxygen tubes in her nose. But she sees the boys, and her whole face lights up with the biggest smile. She tells them to come here, that she's okay. My younger son slowly walks to the bed, and I help him climb up carefully next to her. He hugs her gently like she might break. My older son stands close and takes her hand without saying anything. Tears are running down his face, but he's trying to be strong. Cass strokes my younger son's hair and tells both boys she's okay. just a little broken right now, and the doctors are fixing her. She says it's like when they fall down and get a scrape, except this scrape is inside where they can't see it. My younger son asks if it hurts, and she says sometimes, but the medicine helps. My older son finally speaks and asks if she's going to stay in the hospital forever. She tells him no, just for a little while until she's strong enough to come home. Cass pulls both boys closer and tells them she loves them very much. She says she's going to fight really hard to stay with them, and that even if she has to be in the hospital for a while, they're still a family. She promises that nothing will change how much she loves them. My older son looks at her seriously and says that Mommy Sarah told him in his dream that Cass needs us to love her extra hard right now. Cass completely breaks down crying when he says this. She pulls him into a tight hug and sobs into his hair. My younger son starts crying too because Cass is crying. I'm standing there trying to hold it together for everyone, but barely managing. The ICU nurse appears in the doorway and gently says the boys need to go now so Cass can rest. My sister comes in and coaxes both boys away with promises of ice cream. They each kiss Cass goodbye, and my older son tells her he'll see her tomorrow. After they leave, the room feels too quiet. Cass won't look at me. She stares at the ceiling and more tears slide down into her hair. She finally says she can't do this. She can't put the boys through watching another mother die. She says maybe it would be kinder to end things now, while they're still young enough to forget her. I tell her absolutely not. I say running away to protect them from grief would actually hurt them way more than staying and fighting. I remind her that my older son has already lost his birth mother, and now he's bonded with her. Walking away would teach him that people he loves always leave. I tell her the boys deserve the chance to love her for whatever time we have, whether that's months or years. She argues that watching someone die is traumatic for kids. I say yes it is, but so is abandonment. I tell her that if she gives up now, they'll always wonder if they weren't worth fighting for. That hits her hard, and she covers her face with her hands. She asks how I can be so sure this is the right choice. I tell her I'm not sure of anything except that I love her, and the boys love her, and we want every possible day we can get. She reaches for my hand and holds it against her cheek. She whispers, "Okay, she'll try." Dr. Alexandria Brooks arrives around 7 that evening. She's younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She shakes both our hands and sits down in the chair next to Cass's bed. She doesn't waste time with small talk. She tells us straight out that this is experimental treatment with serious risks and no guarantees. The clinical trial protocol uses immunotherapy drugs that basically teach the immune system to recognize and attack cancer cells. They combine that with targeted radiation to shrink the tumor before the immune response really kicks in. Cass asks how long the treatment takes, and Brooks says the initial phase is about 6 weeks of intensive therapy. After that, if she responds well, they move to maintenance treatment that could last years. She explains that they're trying to turn her cancer into a chronic condition she manages rather than something that kills her quickly. I ask about success rates, and Brooks is honest. She says only about 30% of trial participants show significant tumor reduction. But for those 30%, the results can be remarkable. Some people have lived years beyond their original prognosis. Brooks pulls out a tablet and shows us charts and data from previous trial participants. She explains that side effects can include severe fatigue that makes it hard to function normally, immune system complications that leave patients vulnerable to infections, brain swelling that causes headaches and sometimes seizures, neurological symptoms like numbness, confusion, or difficulty with coordination. She says they monitor patients very closely and adjust treatment if side effects become too severe. Cass asks if she'll lose her hair, and Brooks says probably yes from the radiation component. She mentions that the trial requires a 2-year commitment to monitoring and treatment cycles. That means regular scans, blood work, hospital visits, and staying on consistent health insurance coverage. Brooks looks at me and says, Cass would need to stay on my military insurance, which means we'd need to remain married for at least the next 2 years. Cass's eyes dart to my face when Brooks says this. I can see the worry there, like she thinks I might back out now that things are getting complicated and long-term. I tell Brooks that staying married isn't a problem at all since we're actually planning to renew our vows properly anyway. Cass's mouth opens slightly in surprise. Brooks smiles and says, that's really good to hear, because the emotional support of family significantly improves outcomes in her experience. She says patients who have strong support systems tend to tolerate treatment better and show better results overall. She asks if we have questions, and Cass wants to know when treatment would start. Brooks says if we decide to enroll, they can begin the intake process tomorrow and start actual treatment within 3 to 5 days. She leaves consent forms with us and says to take tonight to think about it. talk it over, and let her know in the morning. After she leaves, Cass looks at me with tears in her eyes again. She asks if I really meant what I said about renewing our vows. I tell her I've never meant anything more in my life. She squeezes my hand, and we sit there for a while just holding each other before a nurse comes in to prep her for the first round of testing. They wheel her away on a gurney, and I follow as far as they'll let me, which is just outside the radiology department. My brother shows up with coffee and a breakfast sandwich I can't really eat, but I force down half of it because he's giving me that look that says he'll physically shove it in my mouth if I don't. The waiting area has those uncomfortable plastic chairs and magazines from 3 years ago, and I end up pacing instead of sitting because sitting makes me feel like I'm going to crawl out of my skin. They run an MRI first, then a PET scan, then blood work that takes 6 vials, then some kind of genetic testing that Dr. Brooks ordered to see if Cass's tumor has specific markers that respond better to the immunotherapy drugs. Each test takes forever, and they only let me see her in brief windows between procedures when she's being moved from one department to another. She looks exhausted and scared, but she keeps trying to smile at me like she's the one who needs to make me feel better about this situation. My sister texts me updates about the boys, sends me photos of them eating lunch and playing in the backyard, and I'm grateful they're too young to fully understand what's happening. The first day of testing finally ends around 8 at night, and they move Cass back to her ICU room where she falls asleep almost immediately. I pull the chair close to her bed and try to sleep sitting up, but every time a monitor beeps or a nurse comes in to check vitals, I jolt awake thinking something's gone wrong. The second day is more of the same, different scans from different angles, more blood work, a consultation with the clinical trial coordinator who explains the consent forms in detail that makes my head spin. Cass has to sign about 40 pages, acknowledging she understands the risks, that the treatment is experimental, that she could have severe side effects or die from complications, and watching her sign each page makes me want to throw up. They do a lumbar puncture to test her spinal fluid, and she grips my hand so hard during the procedure that she leaves marks on my wrist. I survive on vending machine coffee that tastes like dirt and granola bars my brother keeps shoving at me, and I haven't showered in 3 days, but I can't make myself leave the hospital long enough to go home. My sister brings the boys by for a brief visit on the evening of the second day, and my older son asks why Cass has to do so many tests. I tell him the doctors need to make sure the medicine will work right, and he seems to accept this explanation better than I expected. On the morning of the third day, Dr. Brooks comes to Cass's room with a tablet in her hand and a smile on her face. She tells us that Cass qualifies for the trial, that her tumor has the genetic markers they're looking for, and that her overall health is strong enough to handle the aggressive treatment protocol. Cass starts crying with relief, and I realize I'm crying too, which is stupid because qualifying for an experimental trial with a 30% success rate shouldn't feel like winning the lottery, but it does. Dr. Brooks says they can start the first treatment cycle this afternoon, that Cass needs to stay hospitalized for at least a week, so they can monitor for severe reactions, and that if everything goes well, she can transition to outpatient treatment after the initial round. She leaves us with more paperwork and a schedule of what to expect over the next several days. I tell Cass I need to run home to shower and pack bags for an extended stay, and she nods, but doesn't let go of my hand right away. My brother drives me home because I'm too tired to be safe behind a wheel, and the house feels weird and empty without Cass and the boys in it. I grab a quick shower that feels amazing and start throwing clothes into a duffel bag. Then I remember Cass will want her laptop, so she can keep up with her nursing coursework. I find it on her desk in the guest room, still open to those apartment listings she was looking at before everything fell apart. The browser has multiple tabs open showing studio apartments and one-bedrooms in cheap neighborhoods across town, and seeing them makes my chest hurt in a way that has nothing to do with fear about the tumor. I close the laptop and pack it carefully in my bag, along with her textbooks and notebooks, because she's going to need something to work toward, besides just surviving. When I get back to the hospital that afternoon, they're already setting up her first immunotherapy infusion. The bag of medication looks innocuous hanging from the IV pole, just clear liquid that doesn't look like it should have the power to save or kill someone. A nurse explains that the infusion will take about 4 hours, and they'll be monitoring Cass constantly for any signs of reaction. I settle into the chair next to her bed, and she reaches for my hand as the nurse starts the medication flowing through her IV line. The first hour goes okay, and I read aloud from one of her nursing textbooks about cardiac pharmacology because she insisted she doesn't want to fall behind in her program. The second hour, she starts feeling nauseous, and they give her anti-nausea medication through her IV. By the third hour, she's running a fever of 101, and they're packing ice around her to bring it down. The fourth hour, she's so exhausted she can barely keep her eyes open, and when the infusion finally finishes, she falls asleep immediately. That night, my brother brings the boys by one more time before taking them to his house, where they'll stay until Cass is stable enough to come home. My older son asks me if Cass is going to be his real mom now, and I tell him she already is his real mom in all the ways that matter. He thinks about this for a minute, then asks if that means Mommy Sarah isn't his mom anymore, and I have to explain that he's lucky enough to have two mothers who both love him completely. He seems satisfied with this answer and hugs me tight before leaving with my brother. The next 3 days are brutal, as the treatment hits Cass harder than anyone expected. She can barely stay awake for more than an hour at a time, and when she is awake, she's either nauseous or running a fever or both. I read to her from her textbooks, even when she's sleeping, because she made me promise I wouldn't let her fall behind, and I figure hearing the information can't hurt, even if she's not fully conscious. On day 4 of treatment, everything goes wrong fast. I'm reading about respiratory disorders when Cass suddenly grabs her head and makes this sound I've never heard from her before, this awful cry of pain that brings nurses running. Her words come out garbled and wrong, like her mouth can't form the shape she needs, and the fear in her eyes as she struggles to speak is one of the hardest things I've ever witnessed. They rush her for an emergency CT scan, and Dr. Brooks meets us in the imaging department looking grim. She explains that Cass is having significant brain swelling from the immunotherapy, that they need to adjust her medication protocol immediately, and that they're adding high-dose steroids to control the inflammation. They reduce the immunotherapy dosage by half and start the steroids through her IV, and I sit next to Cass holding her hand while she tries and fails to tell me something. Within 2 days, the steroids start working, and her speech comes back mostly to normal, though she still struggles with some words. She's discouraged and asks Dr. Brooks if this means the treatment isn't working, but Brooks explains that reactions often indicate the immune system is activating, which what they want. Over the next 2 weeks, they find the right balance of medications that control the swelling without stopping the immune response completely. Cass slowly gets stronger, able to stay awake for longer periods, able to eat small amounts without getting sick. 3 weeks into treatment, Dr. Brooks finally says Cass is stable enough to go home with outpatient monitoring, and the boys are so excited when I tell them they practically bounce off the walls. We set up the guest room as a recovery space with everything Cass needs within reach, and I take family leave from my job to be her primary caregiver. The reality of treatment becomes our new normal over the next month, with twice-weekly hospital visits for monitoring and medication adjustments. Cass has good days where she can play with the boys and help with homework, and bad days where she can barely get out of bed. I learned to read her energy levels and adjust our plans accordingly, to know when to push her to eat something and when to just let her sleep. My older son starts having nightmares about losing Cass, waking up crying that the angels are taking her away like they took Mommy Sarah. I arrange for him to see the pediatric counselor at the hospital, who specializes in helping children cope with serious illness in the family. The counselor teaches him ways to express his fears through drawing and talking, reminds him that loving someone means being there through the scary times too, and after a few sessions, the nightmares start happening less often. 6 weeks pass with Cass getting stronger between treatments, and Dr. Brooks schedules a follow-up MRI to check if the tumor is growing or shrinking. The scan happens on a Tuesday morning, and they tell us results take 3 days to process. Those 3 days feel longer than the entire first month of treatment combined. I catch myself checking my phone every few minutes like the results might appear early. Cass pretends she's not worried, but I see her touching her head where the tumor sits, like she's trying to feel if it's gotten bigger. On Friday afternoon, my phone rings with the hospital number, and my stomach drops. Dr. Brooks asks if we can come in for an in-person appointment Monday morning instead of getting results over the phone. That's never a good sign. Doctors give good news over the phone and save bad news for face-to-face meetings. Cass sees my face when I hang up and knows immediately. We spend the weekend trying to act normal for the boys, but failing badly. I burn dinner Saturday night because I'm too distracted to watch the stove. Cass starts crying during a commercial about life insurance. My older son asks if the doctors are going to make Cass better, and I tell him we're waiting to find out. Monday morning, my sister takes the boys to the school while we drive to the hospital. Cass holds my hand so tight in the waiting room that my fingers go numb. When they call us back, Dr. Brooks has the scans already pulled up on her computer screen. She turns the monitor toward us and points to 2 images side by side. The first scan from 6 weeks ago shows this huge dark mass taking up space in Cass's brain. The second scan from Tuesday shows the same area, but the dark part is smaller. Dr. Brooks explains that the tumor has shrunk by about 15%. It's still there, and it's still bad, but it's smaller than before. The tissue around it looks less swollen too. Cass starts crying immediately, these huge gasping sobs that shake her whole body. She asks what this means for how long she has left. Dr. Brooks chooses her words carefully. She says if the shrinking continues, Cass could have years instead of months. She's quick to add that this type of brain tumor is hard to predict, and they need to keep doing harsh treatments. But this is actually good news. Real good news. We drive home in stunned silence for the first 10 minutes. Then Cass starts laughing, this slightly crazy sound that makes me worried until she explains she can't believe she might actually get to finish nursing school. That night we order pizza and let the boys pick whatever movie they want. My younger son falls asleep in Cass's lap halfway through, drooling on her shirt. My older son stays awake until the end and then tells Cass he knew she was getting better because Mommy Sarah promised in his dreams. Cass kisses his forehead and thanks him for believing. 2 weeks later, Cass logs into her nursing program portal and emails her professors about coming back part-time. They're all really helpful about her situation and let her attend classes online when she's too tired to go in person. She tells me that having something to work toward besides just staying alive makes the treatment days easier to handle. On good days, she studies at the kitchen table with textbooks spread everywhere. On bad days, she listens to recorded lectures from bed. 3 months after starting treatment, Cass goes in for another MRI. This time we only wait 2 days for results, and Dr. Brooks calls with good news. The tumor shrunk another 10%. She says Cass is officially in the successful response group now. We're careful not to get too excited because Dr. Brooks warns that keeping this response going will need treatments for a really long time, maybe forever. But 10% more gone is 10% more gone. That night after the boys go to bed, I bring up the idea of renewing our vows now that Cass is stable enough to enjoy it. She says she wants to wait until she's done with the harsh treatment part and her hair grows back. I tell her she looks beautiful bald, but I get wanting to feel like herself for our wedding. My brother and sister jump into planning mode immediately. My sister takes Cass shopping on one of her good days when she has energy. Cass sends me a photo from the store trying on a simple white dress. She's smiling huge in the picture, actually smiling like she believes she'll live long enough to wear it. I save it as my phone background. 4 months into treatment, Dr. Brooks says Cass can switch from twice-weekly appointments to once-monthly treatments. The response has been amazing, and she's hopeful about managing the disease long-term. Cass cries again, but happy tears this time. We pick a Saturday afternoon for the ceremony at the same courthouse where we signed papers 3 years ago. But this time my brother and sister will be there, and the boys, and we bought rings together last weekend. Cass insists on writing her own vows and works on them in secret for weeks. I catch her scribbling in a notebook late at night, and she hides it when I come in the room. She says I'll hear them when everyone else does. The morning of the ceremony, my older son knocks on my bedroom door, holding a piece of paper rolled up like a scroll. He asks if he can say something at the wedding, and I tell him yes, without even asking what it is, because his face looks so serious and hopeful. He unrolls the paper to show me a drawing he's been working on for weeks, with colored pencils and markers. The picture shows our family with Cass and me holding hands in the middle, and both boys standing between us. Above us, he drew an angel with yellow hair that looks like the photos of Sarah, and she's smiling down at all of us with rays of light coming from her hands. At the bottom, he wrote in careful letters that love doesn't divide, but multiplies. I hug him tight and tell him it's perfect, and that we'll make sure everyone sees it during the ceremony. We arrive at the courthouse an hour early, and my brother is already there with my sister, who brought flowers for Cass. The boys are wearing matching button-up shirts, and they keep tugging at their collars until I tell them they look handsome. Cass comes out of the bathroom wearing the white dress from the photo, and her hair has grown back enough to curl around her ears. She looks nervous and beautiful, and nothing like the woman who collapsed on her bedroom floor 8 months ago. My brother hands me the rings we picked out together, and my sister fusses with Cass's dress until Cass laughs and tells her to stop. The judge calls us into her chambers, and it's the same woman who married us 3 years ago for the insurance paperwork. She recognizes us immediately and smiles when she sees the boys and the flowers and the way Cass and I can't stop looking at each other. We stand facing each other with our sons between us and my brother and sister on either side. The judge asks if we wrote our own vows, and Cass nods while pulling out the notebook paper she's been working on for weeks. She reads about fighting for every day we have together and loving my boys as her own and choosing this life even when it got scary. Her voice shakes on some words, but she doesn't cry until she promises to be the mother Sarah would want for them. I read my vows next about standing by her through every treatment and challenge and choosing her every single day no matter what the doctors say. I promise to love her completely while honoring Sarah's memory and to build a family that makes both of them proud. When I finish, my younger son reaches up to hold both our hands, and my older son does the same on the other side. The judge wipes her eyes and says she's never seen a more beautiful family in all her years performing ceremonies. She asks for the rings, and we slide them on each other's fingers with hands that shake just a little. The judge pronounces us husband and wife for real this time and tells me I can kiss my bride. I cup Cass's face in my hands and kiss her properly, while our boys cheer, and my brother whoops, and my sister cries, happy tears. My older son steps forward with his rolled-up drawing and asks if he can show everyone. The judge says, of course, and he unrolls it carefully to display the picture of our family with Sarah's angel watching over us. He tells everyone in his serious 6-year-old voice that his drawing shows how love doesn't divide but multiplies, and that Mommy Sarah is happy we're a real family now. Even the judge has to grab a tissue from her desk and dab at her eyes. We sign the certificate again, but this time it means everything, instead of just being insurance paperwork. My sister takes photos of all of us with her phone and promises to get them printed and framed. We drive home in 2 cars with the boys riding with my brother, so Cass and I can have a few minutes alone. She holds my hand over the center console and tells me she can't believe this is real. Back at the house, my sister set up a small cake on the kitchen table with white frosting and yellow flowers that match the roses I brought Cass months ago. My brother connects his phone to a speaker and plays music while we cut the cake and feed each other bites like you're supposed to at weddings. The boys get frosting all over their faces and shirts, but nobody cares because we're all laughing too hard. Cass kicks off her shoes and pulls both boys into the living room where there's more space. She spins them around one at a time while they giggle, and then all 3 of them dance together in a circle. I stand in the doorway watching her laugh and move with my sons and thinking about how close we came to never having this moment. My brother stands next to me and puts his hand on my shoulder without saying anything because he knows what I'm thinking. 6 months after her diagnosis, Cass goes in for another MRI, and we wait 3 days for the results, like always. Dr. Brooks calls us into her office and pulls up the scans on her computer screen. She points to the images and explains that the tumor remains stable at its reduced size, with no new growth detected. She says if Cass maintains this status for 2 years, she'll be considered in long-term remission, which is really rare for her type of cancer, but not impossible. We drive home in careful silence because we've learned not to celebrate too much too soon, but that night, Cass cries in my arms with relief. 2 months later, Cass takes her final exam for nursing school and passes with high scores. She gets her license in the mail 3 weeks after that and frames it to hang in our bedroom. The hospital where she received treatment offers her a part-time position in the cancer unit, working with other patients. She tells me she wants to specialize in helping people going through what she experienced because she understands their fear better than most nurses could. I watch her put on scrubs for her first day and feel proud of how far she's come from the woman who collapsed with blood coming from her nose. My older son's teacher asks us to come in for a conference, and I panic thinking something is wrong. Instead, she tells us he's been talking to other kids at the school about having 2 moms and helping them understand that families come in different forms. She says he's become more caring and mature through everything that happened and that other students look up to him now. I want to tell her I wish he didn't have to grow up so fast, but instead, I just say thank you and feel grateful that something good came from all the hard parts. 8 months after her diagnosis, we settle into a new normal that includes regular medical checkups, but also plans for the future. Cass and I talk one night about maybe having another child together someday, if her health stays stable. Dr. Brooks warns us that pregnancy could be risky with her treatment plan, but says we can discuss it more if she maintains remission for another year. The boys get excited when they overhear us talking about a possible baby, and my younger son asks if it would be a brother or sister. We plan a beach vacation around Cass's treatment schedule, and it's the first time in years I've felt genuinely relaxed. The boys build sandcastles while Cass helps them dig moats and decorate with shells. Ocean waves crash behind them, and the sun makes everything look golden and perfect. I take a photo of the 3 of them laughing together and send it to my sister with a message about being grateful for second chances. That night, after we put the boys to bed, my older son comes into our room and climbs up between us. He asks if I still miss Mommy Sarah, and I tell him I'll always miss her, but I'm also happy with Cass now. I explain that both feelings can be true at the same time, and that loving Cass doesn't mean I loved Sarah any less. He thinks about this for a minute, then says he thinks Mommy Sarah is happy too, because her angel visits his dreams sometimes and she's always smiling. I choose to believe he's right, because it makes everything feel like it happened the way it was supposed to. 1 year passes, and we're back in the hospital for another MRI. Cass squeezes my hand in the waiting room, while the boys do homework on the chairs next to us. The scan takes 45 minutes, and then we wait another hour for Alexandria to review the images. When she calls us into her office, her face looks different from usual, lighter somehow. She pulls up the scans on her computer screen and points to the tumor location. The mass has shrunk another 5% and shows no new growth anywhere. Alexandria uses words like exceptional response and long-term survival potential. She tells us these results are rare for this type of cancer, but they're real and measurable. We don't celebrate too much because we've learned that hope comes in small doses, but driving home that night, Cass reaches over and holds my hand on the steering wheel. She doesn't say anything, but I know we're both thinking the same thing, that maybe we actually get years together instead of just months. 2 weeks later, Cass tells me she wants to start a support group at the hospital for other brain tumor patients. She's been thinking about it since her own diagnosis, how scared and alone she felt before the treatment started working. The hospital administration approves her proposal and gives her a conference room every Tuesday evening. I watch her prepare for the first meeting, printing handouts and arranging chairs in a circle. 6 people show up that first night, some newly diagnosed and some years into treatment. Cass shares her story about the collapse and the tumor discovery and the experimental treatment that saved her life. She talks about being terrified and angry and grateful all at the same time. After the meeting ends, 3 people stay behind to talk to her privately, and I see her hugging a woman who's crying. On the drive home, she tells me that helping others makes her feel like her suffering had purpose, that maybe going through this nightmare means she can guide other people through theirs. Watching her give back to the community that saved her life fills me with so much pride, I can barely speak. Our official 1-year wedding anniversary arrives on a Saturday in October. We decided to celebrate at home with just the 4 of us instead of going out. I make spaghetti while the boys set the table with the nice dishes we never use. Cass disappears into our bedroom for a few minutes and comes back carrying a wrapped package. She tells me she's been working on something secret for months. I open it and find a photo album with a dark blue cover. The first page shows a picture from our courthouse vow renewal, with all of us smiling. She's filled the whole album with photos from the past year. There are pictures from the hospital during her treatment, images of the boys visiting her bedside, but mostly, it's filled with shots of our family laughing together, making breakfast, playing in the yard, doing normal everyday things that mean everything. Each page has little handwritten notes about the moments captured. The last page has a photo from the beach vacation with all 4 of us building sandcastles. Underneath, she wrote that every hard moment led us to this beautiful life together. I can't even thank her properly because I'm too busy crying and holding her. The boys want to see the album too, so we spend the rest of dinner flipping through pages and remembering the year we survived together. A few weeks later, I'm making dinner when my younger son walks into the kitchen and asks Mama if he can have a snack. I freeze with the spatula in my hand because he's never called her that before. Cass turns around from the counter where she's chopping vegetables, and her eyes immediately fill with tears. She kneels down and hugs him and tells him of course he can have a snack. After that, he calls her Mama every single day, like it's the most natural thing in the world. My older son still calls her Cass most of the time, but I overhear him telling kids at the school that she's his mom. We've found a balance that works for us, one that honors Sarah's memory while making space for Cass's place in our family. Sarah will always be their mother who died bringing them into the world, and Cass is their mother who stayed and loved them through everything. Both things are true, and both things matter. 6 months later, we're back in Alexandria's office for the 18-month checkup. Cass has been stable for so long that these appointments feel almost routine now, but we still get nervous waiting for results. Alexandria shows us the latest scans and explains that the tumor remains unchanged from the last MRI. Then she tells us something that makes my heart stop. If Cass maintains this stability for another 6 months, she'll officially be in long-term remission. The odds were terrible from the beginning. Maybe 15% chance of responding to treatment at all. But Cass beat every statistic through pure determination and the love that gave her a reason to fight. Alexandria warns us that long-term remission doesn't mean cured, that Cass will need monitoring for the rest of her life, but it means years of survival, maybe decades, instead of the months we were promised at diagnosis. We're sitting in our backyard on a Sunday afternoon, watching the boys play soccer, when Cass tells me she's grateful for every single day we have together. Even the hard ones in the hospital, even the scary moments waiting for test results, even the times when treatment made her so sick she couldn't get out of bed. She says all of it led us here to this moment with our family healthy and whole. I kiss her and tell her I love her, words I now say multiple times every day because I learned the hard way that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Our life isn't perfect, and the future still holds uncertainty with medical appointments and scan results, and the knowledge that the tumor could grow again. but we're facing it together as a real family built on love instead of convenience. This is everything Sarah would have wanted for us, for her boys to have a mother who adores them, and for me to find happiness again after losing her. Sometimes I think I can feel Sarah watching over us, proud of the family we've become, and the way we've honored her memory while building something new.